Hi, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Something Else podcast. My name is Gabriella, and this is my guest, Shanice.
Hi.
Today, we're going to be having a conversation about grief. But before we get into that, it is the affirmation of the week. So next year, I'm definitely going to have different ones. They're not even ordered yet, so...
Manifest.
Yeah, they're not ordered yet. I still gotta go look on Amazon, so just give me some time. But this one says, I let go of all resistance to change.
Drag me.
Because at that point, if you resist the change is gonna drag you by your eyelids.
It's been dragging me, so I'm gonna stop resisting. That was for me.
Just go with the flow. That's really what it is.
I'm gonna do that.
I was thinking about that this morning. I was like, I'm trying to manage all this stuff, be everything all at once when I should really just be going with the flow of life.
Kind of let it guide you.
Right? It's like swimming against a riptide.
It might drown you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just go with the flow.
Okay. I like that.
So this is a good conversation to have. I'm excited to have this conversation because I feel like grief is something that's not talked about often. People don't know how to process it. Like, honestly, I think people think that when you have grief, it's just like the event, the funeral. Okay, everyone's going back to normal life. But in reality, that's not the case. And a lot of people sometimes have problems really processing it. So for those who don't know your story, who don't know you, please introduce yourself and
Hello.
your story.
I am Shani. If you grew up with me, I'm just Shanice. But my story is that when I was 21, my boyfriend was killed in North Miami where we grew up. And it kind of rocked my world, as it would anybody, right? And I wish I could say that was like the story of my grief, but it's not, because in high school, my senior and junior year, I had 4 deaths in my family consecutively.
Wow.
Junior year was my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, and my uncle, her son. And then senior year was my aunt, my grandmother's daughter, and then my dad, 3 months before graduation. So that kind of set the tone for a lot of grief for me. And a lot before that too. My life is kind of enveloped in grief. But I just kind of moved through it. Not always in a healthy way. But now as an adult, I don't have a choice, because if you don't sit with your grief, it will overtake you. Like, it will sit you down. And I've learned that grief is not just losing a person to death. You can grieve a relationship, you can grieve a job that you lost, you can grieve the life that you thought you would have. So grief is everything. Like, anybody can experience grief, but people don't actually know that, and they don't know how to process it. They don't know how to sit with it. I didn't know how to sit with it. So like now I'm like, as soon as I see somebody, I'm like, hey, you need to chill out a little bit.
So the passing of your family members, do you think having the experience with grieving them kind of prepped you somewhat, when your boyfriend passed?
Nope, because I didn't grieve. I just moved through life. My family's from Costa Rica, and I am a firstborn in America. So all of my family is back home, and my dad eventually moved back to Costa Rica. So me grieving them was kind of like, well, not seeing them that often anyway. So yes, they're my family, and my dad, obviously. But I didn't grieve them. It was like me going there for the funeral and then coming back home and like tuning it out completely.
Yeah.
Even my dad, like, I don't think I cried. My dad got sick and then passed away. So I don't think I cried very much. I know the one that shook me was my aunt. She was also like murdered. It was a domestic violence situation.
Gotcha.
And so I know that shook me like to my core also. But I just kind of moved through it. And as a teenager, all those things happening to me as a teenager, it was kind of like, yeah, well, you gotta go to school, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. And looking back now, it affected me because the first 3 of those deaths happened my junior year, which is when you're supposed to be getting ready for college. And I did not care about college anymore. I purposely missed my college application deadlines on purpose because I was like, well, I don't care. Like, I'm going through a lot right now.
Yeah.
I don't care about college. And my mom was like, well, you better care about college. So I was like, sure, you can't make me do it. But I did end up going to community college, Miami-Dade. But that alone, like, is like, had I not had those deaths, I would have gone away to college. I would have done this. I would have done that. And so you sit back and you think about, what are all the things I would have done had I not been grieving? Had I not had that trauma? Because grief is a trauma.
Yeah.
And people don't talk about that. So I have PTSD. Like, I've gone to therapy about it. And people are like, oh, like, you went to the army? I'm like, no. I have grief. And they're like, I don't understand. Like, what do you mean? And it's like, people don't realize that a trauma could be anything that happened to you. Anything that's a big change from your life, like, will affect the rest of your life. So you do have to work through that by yourself, with the therapist, with your friends, work through it. Because if not, like, at the end, it'll all blow up. And for me, it blew up when my boyfriend died, because I was like, oh, this is too much. And I was living alone in New York at the time. And so I blew up my life, and I said, I cannot stay here. Not just me. Everyone around me said, like, you cannot be in New York by yourself anymore.
Yeah.
And so I moved back to Miami, and then I had to grieve the life that I left in New York. So it was a series of, like, pushing through and, like, let me just go back to work immediately, always after. Let me just go back to work. Let me go back and do this. I, like, never sat down and processed it. And I would try to move through it. I moved around a lot. I moved to France for a few months. Like, oh, I'm gonna move across the world, and it's a thing that I do. I just move and run, and eventually it sits you down.
With grief, it's kind of like the thing where you try to do stuff to keep you busy.
Yeah.
Like you said, you went to France.
Yeah.
Like, even for some people, and that's something else that you mentioned, grieving a relationship. Oh gosh. Like, grieving a relationship. People think that, you know, a lot of the times it's death, but you can grieve a relationship and it's super painful.
I know that part too.
A lot of the time, you know, if the person passes, you have the closure that, okay, they're no longer
You just have to
here.
deal with it.
Exactly. But, you know, the person being alive, and then you have to grieve them. Oh my God.
If you, like, have memories of them, if you go to a place that you used to go to together, if you have mutual friends. I've also grieved relationships. It's awful.
Yeah.
And I would say, honestly, it might be worse than, like, grieving a person that I lost, because I still have to see some of these people. I still have to get texts from them sometimes. Even if I don't want to speak to them, they're going to find a way to speak to me.
Yeah.
And you have to grieve sometimes, knowing I'm the one that cut this relationship off. It wasn't so good. It wasn't so great for me. Grieving that alone is like, well, I could still be there if I wanted to. You know, you're not supposed to be there, but it's like, this person is still trying, or just letting go of it and being like, that's it, that's over. That's a grief that's like, whew, that one is rough. So,
and just because you end a relationship does not mean you're not going to feel pain.
Nope.
Like, I always thought that, okay, now that the relationship is done, you're gonna go be happy.
No.
You just cut it off with this person,
Doesn't work
you're
like that.
crying.
Yeah.
Like, you're at home like, oh my God, like, what did it?
And it can hit you anytime. You could be over that relationship, and 2 years later you get a memory of something, and it's like, maybe I should call this person. And they're like, no. And then you're like, well, what if this, what if that? What would my life have been like? And it's just like a series, and like this is a whole life thing. Grieving is a whole life. It never stops at any point. You're going to keep grieving. It gets better at some point, right? Like, you know, okay, I had this happen for a reason. I had to let this go because I needed to grow from it, whatever. But, like, you never stop going back to it. Like, well, what if, right? That's a part of the grief. What if? The denial, anyway. What if?
So when we talk about relationships, how did you and your boyfriend who passed meet?
It's gonna sound like a movie. We went to high school together. I did not know who he was in high school. No idea. Apparently we would have graduated together. He left our high school maybe a year or two before graduation, and I don't remember anything about him in high school. I don't even remember seeing him in high school, other than him telling me that when I used to walk home, I used to walk past his block, and he would always, like, yell out to me and, like, try to get my attention. And he said every single time I would ignore him. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like me. Like, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was, like, very antisocial. Like, I didn't want to talk to people. He was like, yeah, you ignored me every single time. And I always said, one day I'm going to get that girl. And I was like, me? Like, what were you seeing? Because I was, like, a kind of dorky teenager. He was like, yeah, I don't know. I always said I was going to get you. And I was like, okay, well, great. And the year after I graduated high school, I was working at Burger King through high school. And he lived like 2 blocks away from Burger King. So he would always come to Burger King with his friends. And like, I mean, in high school, Burger King was the place to be for some reason. And I remember one day him being like, so can I get your number? And I was like, I'm working. Like, no. No. And then I went home and had a message on Facebook. And it was like, so you're not working, can I get your number? And I was like, wait, we're Facebook friends? I was like, I remember us being Facebook friends, but I don't remember this whole thing happening. He was like, well, yeah, I told you one day I was gonna get you. And I was like, okay. And he was like, I don't know how to explain this, but you're my dream girl. And I was like, I'm your dream. I was like, this man is
crazy, buddy.
Crazy. I was like, you're delusional, because what are you seeing with me? But that's how it started. And that was December 2010, which was like a few months after we graduated. And like the first week of January, he was just like making comments like, okay, so you're my girlfriend now. Like, he didn't ask me. He was like, so you're my girlfriend now. And I was like, maybe, like, I don't know. And he was just very much like trying to get me to like see it. And I was like, I don't know, because I have never been a relationship person. Everybody knows that about me. I'm very much, I can be by myself. I was always like, I'm gonna be the rich fine auntie that travels the world, and I am still, but I just never saw that for me. Just didn't care for it. But he made it very different. And so like in the first like 3 months of our relationship was like, I love you, and like came and met my mom like the first 2 weeks of us being together. And I didn't want him to meet my mom. I was pretty much hiding him, because I was like, you meet my mom, you're gonna think it's serious. And he said, no, because I'm taking you out, I need to meet your mom, like as like a form of respect. And he like came to my door, and my mom met him, and my mom was like, well, why haven't I met you before? And he was like, well, she didn't want me to. And then from there, him and my mom were like this. My mom was obsessed with him. My little brother was obsessed with him. Like, my whole family. He went to church with us. Like, it was, I don't know what, but it moved very quickly. And it was like, I've never felt this before, ever. I want to say 3 months into our relationship, I was like, okay, well, I'm moving to Georgia, so it's been real. It's only been 3 months. I literally said, and he was like, no, I'll wait. I was like, you know we're 18, right? Like, what do you mean you'll wait? Like, you don't know what's gonna happen. You don't know if I'm coming back. He was like, I'll wait. I was like, okay, cool. Like, I like you, but it's not that serious. And he was like, yeah, I'll wait. And I was like, okay. So the day I was moving to Georgia, he took me to the airport, him, my mom, my brother, and my best friend. And it was this big, dramatic crying fest of me and my best friend crying. And then when I was walking away to go on the plane, he went like up to me and was like, okay, I love you. And I was like,
what do you want me to say?
I was like, well, I didn't say it back.
Just give me a hug.
Little kiss. I gotta go. I was like, what do you mean you love me? We've been together 3 months. Like, you don't even know me. But like, I moved to Georgia and we did not break up. It was rough because like, it's a long distance relationship and you're a teenager. And as a teenager, like, hanging out is the relationship.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't see how this is gonna work. I'm in another state. But somehow he was consistent. Like, we would watch movies on the phone. It was like when Uvu was a thing.
Yeah, I remember that.
We watched movies together. We'd be on Uvu. FaceTime was not like a thing yet, but like it was probably getting there. But we had video calls, and he'd be like, "Okay, we're gonna watch this movie at this time. I need you to start it at this exact second." And we'd just be on the phone. I'm like, he really, I mean, God bless that man, because me, if it was up to me, I'd been like, for real. And I did it again and moved away 2 years later. And I was like, listen, there's nothing in Miami for me. I don't see it. Like, I was like, I just don't feel like there's anything that I could be doing here. So I'm just going to move to New York. And this came out of nowhere. I'm just going to move to New York. And he was like, oh. At this point, we're like 2 years into our relationship. He's like, oh. okay. And I was like, well, you can come with me. He's like, you know that I'm not moving to New York. He was like this with his mom and was like the baby of the family. He was like, I'm not leaving my mom. I was like, I respect it because I love your mom. And at that point, I had moved into their house, like their family home, because my mom moved 2 hours or an hour away to Homestead. And I told my mom, you can go. I was like, I'm not going. I'll find my own apartment. First of all, you're 19. Like, you don't even know what real life is yet. You ain't never paid a bill in your life. I was like, yeah, I'm going to find my own apartment. And mom was like, all right.
Go do you.
I lied to her. I said, I'm going to go move in with my best friend. And she was like, well, yeah, that sounds like a reasonable thing, because she knows that we used to live on like 3 houses apart from each other. She was like, that's reasonable for you to do. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go live with my best friend. And she was like, okay. And then like a few months later, she found out I was lying. And she popped up at his house with groceries. My mom is that kind of person. She popped up at his house with groceries and was like, so, this is where you've been? I was like, yeah, kind of. She was like, okay. She's like, you could have just said that. I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't know, I just lied. And she was like, yeah, stop doing that. So I was living with him and his mom, his family, who like took me in as their own. His mom told me that I was not allowed to go anywhere else. They used to have like a little studio apartment behind their house, and I asked her if I could rent it. That was my plan. I was like, I will pay money. And he said, well, she's gonna say no. And I said, but you didn't even ask her. He said, she's gonna say no. And I was like, okay, fine. He was like, she's gonna say no because she's gonna tell you to move into the house with us. And I was like, she's not gonna do that. This is a Haitian mom. Like, we're teenagers. Your mother is not gonna tell me to come move into the house. Lo and behold, she did. She told me to move into the house. And so I lived with them for a while, but I was like, my life is too, everything is being handed to me right now.
Yeah.
I have to do no hard work. And I was in college and I was working a job, but I had no real responsibility. And I never actually, outside of like caring for my little brother, I'd never like paid real bills, anything. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna move to New York and see what life has for me. What was I doing? Don't know, because I moved there with like no money. And no real plan other than, yeah, I'm gonna go do something there. And I did it. Definitely did it. And moved there, and I told him, yeah, I'm gonna go so we can break up once again. And he says, no, I'll wait for you. I was like, but you don't know when I'm coming back. Like, I'm gonna go to school. He was like, okay, so when you're done, come home. And that didn't make sense to me, because it's like, I'm telling you that I'm leaving. Why wouldn't you just let it go?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, let it go. But he did not let it go. And I'm glad he didn't, because the foundation of that relationship shaped me. Like, every time I wanted to quit and come home from New York, I was like, it's too hard here. I can't do it. He'd be like, you can do it. Like, you got it. You'll be fine. And I'll be like, I'm broke. Yeah, it's New York City. Nobody told you to move there in the first place. And he'd send me money and be like, you know, it's fine. Like, relax. You got it. Go and do what you came to do. Finish. And come home. So like, even when he didn't want me to go. Like, obviously nobody would want their partner to move across the country, but he didn't tell me that. He never once said don't go. He never once said I don't want you to go. He said go.
Did you have a plan when you moved to New York?
No.
Okay.
I'm a wing it person. So my plan was, I'm gonna move to New York and like I'll find a job
doing something.
And I was working at a retail store at the time. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna email managers at every single store in New York City and get a job. I did it. It worked. So it's not like, you know, my delusional plans, they work sometimes. So I did do that. I emailed managers, and like on the first week of getting there, I got a job. So that was fun. I worked with that company for a solid like 7 years. And the plan wasn't the plan, but it worked somehow. And the year that he died, like, was like the best year of my life right before that happened, because I was like, I finally have a grasp on my own life. Like, I'm fully independent now. Let me tell it, right? But he was still paying my phone bill and he was still sending me money. So not so independent. But I had a sense of self, which is what I really wanted, and just like not having to take care of anybody else or not having anyone take care of me. Gotcha. And moving to New York gave me that, and then I was like moving up in my company and like really figuring it out somehow. And so when he died, like all of that crashed. And so that part of grieving kind of made it even worse, because it's like I just went from being on the top of where I thought my life would be to like, I have nothing now. And that sounds very dramatic, but it's like I came back to my mom's house and I moved to Homestead where she lived. I didn't know anything about Homestead. It's boring. It was boring there. There was nothing to do there. If anyone lives in Homestead, you know what I mean. There's nothing to do there. And it's like I got another job with the same company. Again, I did the thing. And I was like, maybe I can transfer it to, that's what I always used to do, just bounce around and transfer to different stores. And so I think I worked at like 6 stores in my time being in that company. And I used to like walk to work. But it was so small and quiet that I would literally walk from my house to the store, or I would bike to the store, and I was like just trying to get through it.
Yeah.
So I was moving in autopilot for a long time, and I went to France because I was like, I'm unhappy. What is this? I'm just gonna move. That's kind of my thing. I'm unhappy. I'm just gonna move. And I've done that probably 10 times in 12 years. I just get up and go. And just start over. But I realized in these last 2 years of being back home in Miami, where I moved home, and I've been here for that time, that getting up and going doesn't change anything. Like, wherever you go, there you are. So you take your problems and you take them with you, they're right there. Nothing is changing, including running away from grief. If you don't face it, it's going to come at you in a different way. So
sometimes I think about that and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take the leap. I'm going to move somewhere. But then I'm just like, what am I really doing it for? Right. Am I doing it to run away from something, or because I want to make a move that's going to improve my life? Because if I'm doing it to run away from something, this is true, them problems going to follow you. And
sometimes it can be both. Like sometimes had I not moved to New York, I wouldn't be the person I am today. I formed my entire career after retail in New York City because of what I knew about the city. I met people that changed my life in New York City. So I did have to go there, for sure. Me going to Paris was off a chance of meeting someone and like talking to them, being like, well, do you need an assistant? Like I was just like throwing stuff out there. Do you need an assistant? I'd never been an assistant before. Not really anyway. Like I'd done assistant work, and the person was like, actually I do. I think they were at the time running HR for different companies in the world.
Gotcha.
And I just kind of winged it like I always do. And they actually were like, yeah, reach out to me when you're ready. And when I moved back home to Miami and got tired of being in Miami and like was sad and was like, I need to go somewhere else, I was like, let's see where this person is, right? And they were in Paris at the time, and I was like, well, I've always wanted to go to Paris. And I was like, I know. And I always talked to Kenny is my boyfriend, and I was like, I always talked to him about when we would go to Paris one year and put the lock on what's the thing called, the Love Lock Bridge.
Yeah.
It's like I always said I was gonna do that. I'm gonna go do it. And I went to Paris, and I would like to tell you that for 3 months I did nothing but stay in the apartment. Did not do anything. Did not see the Eiffel Tower. Did not go to the Louvre. Did not go shopping. I did nothing for 3 months while I was in Paris because I was so sad. And I didn't realize that I didn't deal with my grief. So like, why did I think that I was going to move somewhere?
And then miraculously it would go away.
Oh my gosh, I feel so much better now. It didn't work like that.
So the time around his passing, like how at the time, like when you heard the news, like going through like the services, like what was your frame of mind and how were you able to like somewhat keep it together at the time?
I pretended it wasn't happening for the most part. I was like, yeah, this is not happening to me. Just straight up denial at some point. This is not happening to me. Like I remember waking up that morning from my sleep. I sleep with my phone on silent just because I don't like to be woken up, and I don't like the sounds of phones anyways. So I always sleep with my phone on silent. And I woke up to 5 million messages on my phone, and I was like, too many people calling me. I was like, what is happening? And I looked at like a few messages that were like, sorry for your loss, and I was like,
what are you talking about?
What are you talking about? Sorry for whose loss? And so I was just like, I don't know what this is gonna be. I kind of don't want to know. But he didn't answer my phone call the night before. He answered it and he told me he was gonna call me back, and he didn't call me back. He always called me back. even if I was sleeping, he would call back so that I would see the call in the morning and know that he was fine. So when he didn't call me back, my mind automatically went, yeah, I don't want to hear this right now. And so I looked at my phone, and then I got on Instagram. And that's the last thing you should do.
Yeah.
That is the absolute do not get on Instagram, because all you're going to see is people posting your loved one and talking about them, and now it's real. Because now everybody is reminiscing on the memories, on this and that, and I'm like, oh, this is awful. And I know that I cried, and I cried, and I cried. And I had to call my job to say, hey, I'm not coming to work. And I think I even texted my manager, who I was really good friends with, and I told her what happened, and I was like, listen, I can't come to work. And she kind of responded in a way did you think I was going to tell you to come to work? She was appalled that I even had to call her, and she was like, surely I would have figured it out, you would have posted it or something. But I was in New York alone, living by myself. So in that moment, that's why everybody was calling me, because I was alone. And everybody was like, you need to get home now. Get home now. And I was like, you think I can get on a plane right now and not lose my mind? I was like, can you give me some time? Give me some time. And that whole day, all I did was read our messages. I didn't read many other people's messages, but I read our messages, and I was like, I am so glad that became the person that is I love you every second of the day person, because he died knowing that I loved him, and I know that he loved me, because we were those kind of people.
Yeah. Every
single time. Okay, love you. Okay, love you. I wasn't that person before, but he made me that way. And so, kind of at least this person knew that I loved him, without a doubt. So it was a rough day and a rough week, because I had to go home to his mom. Yes, it was me, but that was her baby. And so going home to his family was this is hard. And then every single person that I didn't know in his family that I got introduced to, his mom said, this is Kenny's wife. And I'm like, we didn't get married. Yes, we were going to get married. He proposed to me on the phone, so it doesn't really count, but he asked me to marry him, and I was like, sure, yeah, whenever we are in the same city, we can do that. But he told his mom, apparently. And maybe his mom's automatically, I think Haitian moms are yeah, that's it, you're the one. So she introduced me to everybody as his wife, and every time she did it, it kind of punched me in the chest.
Yeah.
And I was like, even worse, the funeral was a white funeral. I was like, why would you do that? I have to go and buy a white dress? Why would you do that? And everybody then, I remember everyone saying, well, yeah, this should be your wedding, not a funeral. And I'm like, do you think that's making it better? It's not. This is awful. I just remember the best part of it, the part that kind of alleviated some of it, was watching people talk about him. Mm-hmm. And the things they said about him. And I was like, oh, okay, so other people saw the same thing that I saw. He was a very good person. Everyone talk about how authentic he was, and just that he really went out of his way for other people. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? Move through it in a way strangers reached out to me. People I had no idea existed would reach out to me and be like, hey, I don't know you, but Kenny was my friend. I went to elementary school with him. People from way back. People that he knew from just random places would reach out to me and be like, I'm praying for you. I'm so sorry. And I'll check in on you. And they did. So many people that I had no idea who they were would constantly reach out to me and check in on me.
So would you say the legacy that he left behind, because he was a rapper.
He was, yeah, in North Miami. And his mission was to put North Miami on the map. And for us anyway, he did. And he did something right, because he's still remembered until this day in North Miami as a legacy. Mm-hmm. So he absolutely did leave a legacy with everyone that he knew. There is not one person that doesn't have a good thing to tell you about him. So many people. And that kind of alleviated it and made my heart kind of okay, well, you know what? Figure it out, right? Figure out how to carry this legacy on.
So what was your process in the months, in the years to come?
Mostly ignoring it.
Okay.
Mostly pretending it didn't happen. A lot of pretending it didn't happen. Until eventually you can't pretend anymore. Like, it hits you over and over. And little things like a song that you hear and you're like, oh my gosh, this used to be our song. Little things, right? But then also remembering, okay, well, wait, I have songs that he wrote, right? And I would go on YouTube and watch his videos over and over and listen to his music over and over and like listen to the songs that he wrote for me. And I'm like, well, you know what? A lot of people don't have that I have. Like, they don't have all the memories, and I am a picture person. So you can ask anybody at any moment, I am taking a picture. I don't care. I'm always going to take pictures. And I don't know why I was that way, but now I know that, like, you know, I'm still going to be that person. It doesn't matter to me, because once someone's gone, all you have is like those memories and those pictures. If you don't have the pictures, all you have are memories. One day you might forget. If I forget one day, I still have pictures. So if I'm 80 years old and I can't remember a lot, somebody can show me a picture and tell me, this is the story. And maybe I'll remember. But like, having that was very much a saving grace.
So what are some like tools, techniques, and things that you did that helped you kind of overcome and work through the grief?
I would love to say going back to work, but that didn't help.
Sometimes that makes it worse.
It did make it worse. But I did like try to continue my life as it was until I kind of crashed and then was like, oh, I can't do any of this anymore. But like, what I tell people all the time is like, don't isolate yourself, because you're going through grief and then you isolate yourself and now you're gonna go into a depression because you're gonna be like, no one cares about me. Like, it can be a lot. So like, let people around you like love you and like surround you with all the grace and the kindness and the prayers. I'm telling you now that I don't know how I made it, but apparently everybody was praying for me. And it has to be that, because I have no recollection of most of it. Like, I actually completely blocked out months of that year because I was like, it was too hard. I don't want to deal with it at all. Unfortunately, that's not a good thing to do. Don't block it out, because it'll haunt you later on. But being around people that love you, for sure, talking about it, because that's the one thing that did help me. I got on Instagram and I ran my mouth.
I hope you are enjoying this week's video. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any new uploads. Now back to the episode.
You used to have a blog, right?
Used to have a blog. I didn't start the blog until a year after.
Okay.
But on Instagram is a blog too. So I would every single day post a picture. And I used to be, still am, a no face, no case person. So I would not post anything about our relationship unless you knew us, right? I wouldn't post any pictures. I think I posted one picture, maybe two, the entire duration of our relationship, which was 3.5 years when he died. And so when he died, I started posting pictures. And I would post a picture or post like a screenshot of a conversation and just like let it out. And quite literally, it would be paragraphs on paragraphs of how I felt. So I did blog. I guess that was blogging. I just kind of, whatever I was feeling, whatever, how crazy it sounded, I just let it out in public. And that's what I tell everybody. Everybody watched my grief publicly, and everybody watched me go through that. Because I just got on Instagram and I would post this and I would post that. And I'm sure people were like, God, when is she going to be done? Never. But you have to talk to somebody.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you don't go to therapy and you keep it in, it's going to run you down. So I did let it out publicly to everybody. I didn't want to talk to my friends about it because they would ask and check in, but I don't like to talk about things at that time. I do now. I'll talk about anything. But at that time I was like, I don't want to talk about this thing. But I will write it and I want everybody to see it in public, but don't ask me about it because I'm not telling you. And so even when I would write things, my friends would reach out to me like, are you okay? And I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Oh, your post? Yes, I posted it. It's done now. Thank you. And so it's like, kind of like I'm in denial, but I know that it's not healthy to keep these things in. I would say that for sure, I used to like think about what my future could be. Mm-hmm. And be like, okay, well, I need to do this. And it's like kind of like me wanting to carry on the legacy. up, he did so many things for people. Like, people would come up to tell me, when I was this, when I was broke, he did this for me. Or he did, like, apparently he was, like, the most giving person in the world. I knew he was that way with me, but I didn't know he was that way with everyone. And he would help anybody at any point, it doesn't matter. And so I was like, okay, I want to be that person. Like, I want to be able to help people. And I was a little bit, but not at the level that he was. And so I decided, like, how am I going to make my life about, like, helping people? I went through, like, a few different college majors. It was like, I wanted to be a forensic scientist. Because I was like, yeah, I'm going to help people. I was like, I'm going to be in ballistics. I'm going to help people be able to identify the bullet that killed their loved one. I swore I was going to do that. I was like, yeah, I'm going to be like CSI. Girl, no, you're not. You kind of find out that...
You still do that now.
No.
You still help people.
Oh, yeah, you're right. No, I do. I definitely do. And I kind of just, like, went through the motions of, like, figuring out, how can I help people? How can I be that for other people? And I don't know how it ended up that way, but all I do with my life right now is help people. And, like, it makes me very happy to do it. And it makes me, like, remember, like, I'm continuing a legacy. And that's what I want my legacy to be, is I always think about when I die one day, mortality it's there, right? Let's face it. Like, we were born.
It's happening.
We're gonna die. We're not vampires, unfortunately. We look like it. But, like, we're gonna die one day. And for me, it's like, how do I want people to talk about me? The same way they spoke about him. And the truth. Don't lie and say, oh, she was this and that. If I was mean, guys, say I was mean. That's cool. But, like, that's how I live my life, right? I want people to talk about me and tell the truth. And say, yeah, I remember, like, how helpful she was, or how she would do this. And, like, I just wanted to, not for any reason, like, there's no benefit in doing things sometimes. I just want to do it. It helps someone feel better. You just don't know what people are going through. And people have helped me my whole life. So for me, it was like knowing that I wanted to do something with my life that would reflect everything he taught me. So
legacy is so important, because at the end of the day, people are not going to remember certain things, but they will remember how you treated them.
They're not going to remember how much money you have.
That's true.
They're not going to remember the clothes you wore. I mean, they might if you have some looks, you know. The people should remember my looks for sure. But, like, they're going to remember, like you said, how you made them feel. And I go into every day of my life treating people in a way that, like, I don't ever want to make anybody feel badly. Yeah. I don't know what someone has going on, and it could be a mountain of things, and you say one little thing to someone, and, like, you could send them into, like, the worst spiral.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to ever be, like, my reason for not being, like, mean and awful to people is because I don't ever want to be the spiral that unravels them. Because when I was going through stuff and people were, like, mean to me, I was like, like, I'm already sad. Like, why is it necessary? And it wouldn't, like, be on purpose. Like, maybe something was just going through something themselves.
Yeah. But,
like, think about how you speak to people. Even if you're going through something, right? Think about how you speak to people. Think about how you treat people. I work in caregiving. I call it, like, heart work. My friends call it heart work. I have a network of, like, women who we all do this together. And it's hard work because we care about people. And so our legacy, I want my legacy for sure to be caring about people. And I want people to say, yeah, like, she cared about everything. And I sure did. And I used to be called sensitive. Like, you care too much. You care about everything. That doesn't affect you. Why do you care? People should care more. Like, why don't we?
Heavy on this should care more. There's not enough care in the world today. There's not. And we see it on the news every single time. It costs $0 just to be kind to somebody. Just to not be an a-hole.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's free of charge just to be kind. Of course, you don't gotta let people walk all over you.
Oh, and people know I don't. Like, I'm gonna speak up. And that's another part of it. Like, right? I will speak up for anybody. It does not matter, right? That's a part of me caring. Somebody might not have it in them to speak up for themselves. We see it a lot, right? But I'm gonna speak up because I care. It doesn't matter what's going on, what it's about. If I can't relate to it, it does not matter. Because it makes someone feel some way. And I'm very much the person that's like, people call me politically correct, and I'm like, I simply want to make sure nobody feels badly, which is why I'm politically correct. I'm gonna read up and learn things so that I can know how to say the right things and talk to people and like learn about the issues that don't affect me. Who cares if they don't affect me, right? They might affect either someone I know or somebody I come across one day. It's not just about like, oh yeah, I care about this because like some people will say, oh, I care about this because I know someone that this. You don't know the whole world yet. You don't know everybody you're going to meet in life. One day you could have something that you learned or that you just sat down to take the time to understand that will help someone else in the future. And everything in my life has been a lot so I can help someone else in the future. So
when I think about it and I hear your story, I'm like, all of these pieces were moving together.
Oh, like, you don't even know.
All of these pieces were moving together. You went to Georgia, then you went to New York, then you went to France. Like all of these pieces were moving together.
Yeah.
And I think when people go through grief, it's so hard for them to see these pieces moving together.
I didn't see it. I never saw any of those pieces moving together. I promise you, I probably saw these pieces moving together in 2020 when COVID shut the world down. And I kind of had to readjust my entire life. I think that was probably the first time I sat down in 10 years.
Were you in New York at that time?
I was in New York.
Wow.
And New York shut down.
Oh, yeah.
People don't even understand. Nothing was... My pizza place on the corner was not open. My Chinese food place was not open. Nothing was open. You had to go to the grocery store. You had to stand... If you follow me on Instagram, you remember. Because, again, I'm an Instagram story girl. The lines were so long to do groceries. And I lived in Brooklyn at the time. So it's like... I lived in an area with a lot of elderly people. So it's like you have to be very careful because these are immunocompromised people. And so they would have longer hours for grocery shopping for the elderly, rightfully. But then you would have a window where you could shop. And if you work or you do anything else, like, you have a very short amount of time. Or you would have to go to several different grocery stores. I used to take my little trolley and, like, walk to my neighborhood stores and, like, do the groceries and come back home. But that was the first time I sat down and had to be with myself, by myself, ever, in, like, the history of my grief. And in that time, I want to say, like, I read books, I listened to podcasts, I did, like, breath work, I did yoga, I did everything that I was trying to heal I was really trying to heal. Because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm alone, and with my thoughts, and only that, like, that's different from being able to go.
Yeah.
And that was always me, go to work, go on a trip, go do something. So during COVID, I was like, oh, ain't nowhere to go. You better go inside and figure it out.
That's so important.
And sitting with yourself, just sit still in silence. I didn't even know how to do that.
Some people don't like to. I'm like, why is this person always outside?
Some
people don't like to be home.
I love my house. That's one thing about me. Even though I like to be on the go, I like to be in my house. You can ask all of my friends. I'll tell you myself. I got my dog last week Friday. I did not leave my house until yesterday. The great thing is...
A whole week?
All week. The great thing is I live in a building where I have many things. Like, I could go downstairs and get what I need. So I did leave my, like, apartment, and I have to walk my dog. So I have to walk her at least 4 times a day. So I left, and I went outside. I also have a balcony that I sit on as much as I can. So I get fresh air, and I do things, but I literally did not leave my safe zone. And people will tell you that's me. Like, I will stay inside in my house and just be with myself. It took a long time to get there, but I had to.
Let me highlight that. It took a while for her to get there. Like, it's not going to happen overnight. Like,
it's not.
It takes time to be able to be comfortable, like, by yourself, especially if you're grieving. Mm-hmm. If you're grieving, sometimes it's probably not the best to kind of sit by yourself because all these thoughts are going through your head
not
and
in
you
that
don't want
moment,
to drown.
For sure, yeah.
But finding peace with yourself through your journey is, like, so important.
Yeah, and I would say, like, the person I am now, I couldn't imagine being this person 8 years ago when I was going through the grief, like, in the moment. Like, I couldn't imagine being this person 2 years ago, before COVID. You would have told me, yeah, you're just gonna work. I was like, yeah, that sounds like me. And now I'm a person, like, I can't work too much. I do it, and I do push myself and do things like that, but at some point I need to sit down and just be with myself. I literally quit my job 2 weeks ago so I could sit down and be with myself, because I was on the go for work. I think when we first spoke, I told you, yeah, I'm always gone. Like, I was like, I'll be in Miami for a few days.
Because we originally said, like, next year.
We said January.
And I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, I looked at my calendar and I was like, looks like, I think I have a week in January. And really, I'm like, that's been my life for, like, the last 9 months straight. Is like, let me see if I can pencil you in. I was saying this to my friends and family. Let me see if I can fit you in. I was like, I might have a few hours that I can probably do that. And I'm like, I haven't seen my friends and family in 9 months. I would come home because I worked away, but then when you come home from being away, you're like, I don't want to see nobody. I don't want to talk to anybody. I want to be with myself.
Yeah.
And so at some point it took a toll, and I'm like, I can't live like this. Like, I miss my people. Like, they are the ones that give me the energy. Like, they rejuvenate me. So, like, yes, being by myself, like, recharges me, but also being with the people I love and kind of having community is very important to me. And it's like, you can't do anything alone in this world. You came into the world alone, you're gonna die alone, but you don't have to be alone. True. In this world. And you shouldn't be alone. We weren't meant to be by ourselves, not even just a partner. Like, this is like community, friendship, sisterhood, like any of that, you should find it. Because when you go through tough times, that's who's gonna hold you down. Like, when I was grieving, when I couldn't get it together, everyone around me had it together and would figure out how to make it work for me. That's when I was down, yeah. When I was down in Homestead, I didn't drive anymore. Because when I moved to New York, I was like, there's no car here. So when I came back to Miami, I was like, I'm not driving. And I had like anxiety of driving. So I was like, I'm not doing it. So like, I couldn't go see my friends. There was no way to get from Homestead to Miami other than a 2-hour and 45-minute bus and train ride. I think I did it twice. It was awful.
Yeah, sounds awful.
Or like a $70 Uber. And at the time, I didn't have that much money. I was working in retail. So it's like, sometimes I can spare $70 for an Uber, but not constant. I can't hang out with my friends whenever I want. And I had one friend, her name is Nikki. She would literally drive the 45 minutes to an hour to come and sit in a car with me and just talk. Wow. And we would just talk about anything. One year it was my birthday. It was like a year and a half that I was in Miami. And when it was my birthday, she literally drove 1 hour and a half with a cake that she baked to come and bring it to me for my birthday. It's like this was my first birthday without Kenny. It was awful. Like, I'm a birthday person. Like, my birthday's a big deal. I'm a Libra, so my birthday, everybody needs to shut their life down and it's my birthday.
Celebrate me. Today's my day.
It's my month. It might even be 2 seasons for me. It might be Virgo and Libra season. So like, it's kind of like 3 months together. So it's my time. It's my season. It's me season.
The whole month. Take it off. Close the stores. Literally. Shut down the roads.
Everything canceled because it's my time. But like, that's me. And like, being in a space of grief when like, I'm a very much come love me person was hard, because it's like, I kind of don't want to talk to anybody right now. And she still brought me the cake and was like, yeah, basically like, you're not gonna be alone. We're not doing that. But it took many friends just constantly checking on me and being like, nope, you may not turn your phone off. No, you may not ignore us. Like, just straight up, like, no, you're not gonna do that. Because if they let me do it, like, I would have went into a deep, deep hole of depression. I was already depressed, right? Naturally. This was a hard grief. But had I not had community around me, it would have been much worse. Like, I would have never seen any kind of light at all. So when I say be in community, I mean stay in it, because that's all you have. Like, even if, like, I tell people all the time, they're like, oh, I don't have family. And I try to explain to people all the time, I don't have family in the States. Most of my family is in Costa Rica. So I have very small amounts of family here in the States. Everyone else is a family I created people that I picked, people that I found to be my family. My friends, I'll tell anybody, my friends are my family. I didn't have a choice. I gotta make it. I have one sibling, my little brother, and my mom doesn't have like siblings. She has cousins. But we are very small here. If I go back to Costa Rica, it's a different story. It's like gang over there, like really, truly. My family is huge, but I don't have that here. So they can't support me through anything in another country. You have to find community. If you're a person that doesn't have family here or has a tough relationship with your family, I'm telling you, go and find community somewhere. Find it in a thing that you like. Find it in literally anything. You can find it at work if you really want to. You can find community anywhere. Because when I was in New York, my community was my coworkers. Like all of our retail, like we worked in retail. I used to work for Best Buy. So like we were a family. Really, a lot of us, all we had was each other. It would be people that said like, I moved from here, I moved from here, I moved from here. And we're in New York City. That's a big place to be alone. In the middle of millions of people by yourself, you better find like community.
So having experienced these different like phases of grief, these different ups and downs, like having to find your community, your family, what's one word of advice you would give someone watching this right now on their grief journey?
Oh, okay. Well, this is going to be for the people who don't understand grief yet. When someone's grieving, don't tell them that it's going to be okay.
Gotcha.
Don't tell them, here's one that people are not going to like. Everything happens for a reason. It was God's plan. Maybe one day they can reach that conclusion on their own, but in the moment, don't say that. Don't say, when are you going to get over it? Don't say, it's time for you to move on. We will never move on. We will slowly, right? But it's still something that's in you forever. If anyone like ever told like, oh my gosh, if anyone would ever actually say to me like, oh, get over it, and people have, right? But nobody I cared about anyway. So like I can brush it off. But had anyone I care about said like, it's time to move on, it's time to get over it, that would have crushed me. Because how do you want me to move on from this very important part of my life, right? Especially my first adult relationship. I was gonna marry this man. We were gonna have a family. We were gonna do all these things, and you want me to move on. It doesn't work like that. And I think even in saying like find community, the year that he died, I want to say like on Instagram, there were like 3 other girls whose partners also died. And they were all over the world. Like one was in Chicago. They were everywhere. And somehow, some way, we just kind of connected and like talked to each other. Because it's like, no one can relate to you. In that specific grief, no one can relate unless they've been through it.
Yes.
And so we would talk to each other. And then slowly over the years seeing, okay, this person moved on and like got into another relationship. This person went and got a new job. This person did that. That kind of like motivates you to see, okay, I'm seeing someone go through what I went through, right? This is the only person that can really help you. Someone that sees it for themselves. They experienced it. They know it. They know the feeling of that kind of loss. They're okay now. And that's kind of like, okay, well maybe I'm gonna be okay too one day, right? But no one else can tell you that. The only person that could have ever told me it's gonna get better is someone that experienced it.
Yeah.
That's it. And so I tell anybody who's experienced grief, like, don't try to move through it. Sit with it and give yourself grace, a lot of it, because you're experiencing a trauma that people don't consider a trauma. Like, people don't think of grief as a trauma, but it is. Like, it changes your entire way of being. It changes your whole life. Like, nothing in my life now is the same as it was before I experienced grief. Nothing. I process things so much differently. I'm very sensitive to certain things. Like, when people die, like on the internet, famous people or anything, I log out immediately.
Yeah, I feel that. I've had to do that a few times.
I log out immediately. Immediately. I don't want to see what y'all are about to say.
Because it's very overwhelming.
It's overwhelming, and sometimes y'all are very nasty to people, especially the families of the people who died. Sometimes, like, people are awful. I mean, I remember two deaths that hit me, and I was like, oh, like, I got to deal with my own stuff, were Nipsey Hussle and Kobe Bryant. Nipsey Hussle, because he died in the same way that my boyfriend died. He was shot. And so I watched Lauren London. I went on her Instagram every single day. And I would, like, comment on her posts and just kind of be like, I'm praying for you, or, like, send a heart or something. And then I would just pray for her. Because I'm like, people did that for me. I don't know if it's going to work if I'm praying for this. You don't even know me. I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm just do it anyway. Because I know what she's feeling. And then I saw what people were saying on the internet about him, like, as a person. Oh, he was in that life. He should have known it was going to happen. That's not how life actually works. Like, from what I see on the internet, he was a good person. Some way, somehow, he was a good person. People talk well about him. And that's the life he used to live. But he didn't deserve to die that way. And people on the internet would simply, like, people are very nasty.
Yeah.
People on the internet are awful. Like, I tell people all the time, get off the internet. Put your phone down. Turn it off. Go outside and touch grass. Because this is not a real place. Like, we made it up. The internet, it's a made up place. But all the worst people are on the internet, getting all of their misery out. And it has nothing to do with you, me, that's getting whatever, the bad parts of it. It's a them thing. But this internet is the place that they go to let it out, right? A lot of us go on the internet to let things out. So their misery, they're putting it right here and letting it out. Our choice is log out. Because I don't have to see that. That's awful.
One of the main takeaways, I would say, is protect your peace.
That's it.
Your grief journey is really about protecting your peace in a way that works for you. I think you're exemplary. Is that the word? I hope that's the word. But if it's not the word, you're a perfect example of pieces coming together, whether you kind of realize it or not. And sometimes in time you may not see it, but honestly, sitting here and hearing your journey, I feel like I'm looking at like a full portrait. Like, of course, like, you know, there's still the finishing touches, but I see a portrait, like a painting with all these different colors and then now it's just all coming together.
It feels like that finally, right? But all these years later, because it didn't feel like that.
Sometimes it takes a while.
I felt like, you know, when kids play with toy pieces and they just scatter them. That's how I felt. I felt like a scattered toy box.
It has to come together.
And I feel like now, and I just turned 30 in September.
Happy belated birthday.
Thanks. 30 is guys, if you're under 30, you'll be alright, okay? It's awful before 30. It might be awful after 30 too. But if you're like in your 20s right now, please just relax. It feels like when you're in your 20s, you can't ever do anything right. Something's always there's always a crisis. Are you in your 20s?
Yes.
Okay. It's for you then. It's always gonna feel like a crisis. Everything's gonna be moving pieces all the time, right? It's gonna feel like, oh, I don't even know why I'm doing this. I don't want to do this no more. I quit, and you might actually quit and find something else. I quit. Oh, this don't make sense. Oh, well, this person is my age and they're doing this. Why am I not doing that? Why don't I have this? And we all do it. I know I did. Why is my life not like this? Doesn't matter what somebody else's life is like, right? You don't know what they went through.
That's true.
Maybe they went through some stuff before you. That's why I'm always like, people look at me now and they're like, you live a great life. Yeah, you don't know what's behind it though. Like, oh, you're such a good person. Yeah, you don't know what's behind it though. You don't know why I'm a good person. You don't know why I put all the work into being a good person. That's all I ever care about, is being a good person. Because I remember being a sad girl and upset and angry. And it had nothing to do with anybody else. I was grieving. I'm angry about a lot of things. I'm angry that my people are not here. I'm angry in the way that they died. I'm angry, why wasn't it me? There's even that, right? Why wasn't it me? I often think about how I lived in that house with him. He died in front of his house, right? I lived there. Had I been home at his house, and he was outside for too long, I would have come outside. Everybody that knows him and knows me will tell you that I was the girlfriend that the friends hate. He can't go. He has to go home. I'm calling. Are you coming home? That was me. And it was just like I'm just a protective person. Not possessive, I'm just protective, right? And so I'm that person. So I always think about, I could have been home with him at that time, and I could have gone outside, and it could have also been me. I look at the bullet holes in the house, at the front of the house, that hit the window of the room that we lived in. It could have been me. You never know. And you have to also process that, right? I think it's called survivor's remorse.
Yeah.
You have to process that. Why am I here? Why is this person not here? What's the point? Nobody talks about that, right? At some point it's like, well, I don't really want to be here. Like, my people are gone. And even though you have people still here, when it's like your core people like that, it feels like my people are gone. Like, I had one more death after that really set it in for me. And it was last year, October. One of my best childhood friends passed away. And we're 29 at this point. It was a week and a half after my birthday. I saw her on my birthday. She did my hair. She was like the reason I was that girl. Always, like even since high school. And she passed away, and I like did the thing again. But this time I did it under the guise of, I need to hold it together because now my entire friend group is falling apart. And they were. But why didn't I take care of myself? I was like, nope, I can't fall apart, because all of us can't fall apart. And I'm like, I'm the one that's been through this already. My friends have experienced grief, but they haven't experienced this grief of somebody like this that's like, you're in a circle. They haven't experienced that yet. I already felt it. I know how to move through this. Eventually, I will. And I said, I gotta make sure my friends are good. And we had experienced, like, I want to say, like, 3 deaths back to back of our classmates from high school. Literally, like, July, August, October, like that. And we were all 29. Like, it's like the year that we're about to turn 30. It was the worst thing ever. And I just remember being like, I can't fall apart right now, because everybody else needs to be able to fall apart if they want to.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I got this. I was like, I'm grieving. And I did do I went to therapy. I did all of those things. I did the important things. But I didn't sit with it again. I kept moving. Why are you doing that again? I kid you not, 10 days after she died, I got on a plane and went to New York. It was a day. It was like a day, 24 hours. And I was like, I need to go see my therapist. That's what I called it. And no, I was running away. And one of the girls in our group chat, right, it was 5 of us that have been friends since high school and still friends today. Like, we used to hang out and everything. And I went to New York, and then I came back from New York, and then I went on another trip. And I remember one of the girls saying, where are you? Why aren't you here grieving with us? And it hit me in my chest. And I was like, that's a good point. Where are you? Why aren't you here grieving with us? I was like, oh, that makes sense. And I remember her funeral had been moved a few times. And I remember them scheduling the funeral for like the week of Halloween. And I was on a trip. I almost did not make it to the funeral. I missed my flight. Not on purpose. Like, just life was happening. I missed my flight. I can't even remember. It was Murphy's Law. Everything was going wrong. And I made it to her viewing, like, by the skin of my teeth. I was late. I walked into the viewing late. The doors were already closed.
That's the thing with grief. Like, I would say certain experiences help you maybe process other experiences a little bit better. And I think if anyone is watching this, I hate to say it, but sometimes you just have to go through that first experience to make it a little bit easier for someone else.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
thank you for coming on.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate you being vulnerable because not many people can do that.
Oh, I never did it before, so this is the first for me.
I appreciate it. If the people want to find you, do you want to share your socials?
Yes, I am on Instagram at Melanaire, Melanaire. I can't spell, just like that, no underscore, no anything. That's how you can find me on Instagram. I'm also on Instagram as Winging It with Shani. Just like you heard it, Winging It with Shani, Shani. Those are my 2 pages, and if you want to find me, that's how you find me.
And then guys, you can find us at the Something Else Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. All 4 of them. And then I will see you in the next episode. Bye.